on the 41st side of things. And Queensbridge niggas be acting like they kings. Pushing Lexuses, wearing fat diamond rings.
Hello, and welcome back to yet another video. First video in a long time, man. It's been like a month. Time just gets away from you, honestly. You know, I kept telling myself like a couple weeks ago, oh, I'd make this video today, I'd do it tomorrow, let me do it tomorrow. And here we are in fucking June out of nowhere. But I'm glad to say we are nearly at 100 subscribers, and I have found the motivation to come back and keep making this original content. And let me clarify, this will not affect the low light videos, and I completely respect those of you who are here simply for the low light videos because I mean, obviously it's such a big difference between, a 60-second, low light compilation and 30 minutes worth of original content. But hopefully, as I move into college football original content, which I'm very excited for, I can try and grab some of y'all to be interested in watching that as well. But let's get right into it, man. I'm not going to hold you up for too long. It's been a minute. Let's get into the video, man. We're going to be doing the top 20, in my opinion, comeback players from last season, the NFL. Top 20 comeback seasons, you could say. Starting off, we got Jared Goff. Man, was he ass last year with the Lions? Was he ass his last year with the Rams? It was bad. It was really bad for Jared Goff. People were calling him a bust left and right, and it was not a good look, basically. However, if you look at the stat comparisons here, on the left, you got what I consider to be his 3-year prime with the Rams when he was a Pro Bowler, leading them to the Super Bowl, all that. And then this season, you'll notice that, I mean, it's better across the board, right? But this wasn't what I would call his best season statistically. But I do think Jared Goff just had a career year because before the season, if you looked at that offense, nobody thought that was going to be a dynamic, explosive offense, and it was, I think, in large part to Jared Goff. It was his first Pro Bowl in 5 years, career low in interception percentage, which I think a lot of us, thought was a big issue for Jared Goff. It was a great year all around. He finished, I think, top 5 in comeback player of the year voting, so great year for Jared Goff. Next up, we got Saquon. Man, it sucks to see a young player's career go down the drain due to injuries, and I was convinced that was going to happen with Saquon the last 3 years. Whether he was injured or even out there and just not playing good, it looked very, very rough. But this season, it was so fun to see Saquon turn it back around. Actually had a career high in rushing yards, finished third for comeback player of the year, and man, a big part of why the Giants had a surprise season, I feel like, was due to Saquon. That offense was still not very good, but I think Saquon was the kind of the engine that kept everybody going. His first Pro Bowl since his rookie season. And man, well, look at the stats right there. Basically 1,650 total yards, 10 total touchdowns. Played not all 16, but 16 out of 17 games. Very impressive from Saquon, and I hope he can continue to put together big seasons moving forward. Next up, we got McCaffrey. Now, there was kind of a false narrative going around with McCaffrey because for the first several years of his career, first 2 or 3 years, he was completely healthy, dominating the NFL, offensive player of the year, all that. In the last 2 years, he dealt with injuries. Okay, understandable. Then people started labeling him as Mr. Glassman, can't stay healthy, all that. And then look at this season. Played 17 games, should have been an all-pro in my opinion, but put together a masterful season and helped lead the 49ers to the NFC Championship. So hopefully that narrative is gone because McCaffrey's back. He finished second for comeback player of the year, first Pro Bowl appearance since 2019, obviously. One NFC offensive player of the month. And just look at the stats, man. I didn't even include the passing touchdown he threw in there either. Really should be 15 total touchdowns, but man, it was a crazy year for McCaffrey. And as a Seahawks fan, I don't like it, but I am excited to see him being back and what he can do next year. This is an interesting one, man. Amari Cooper. So many Cowboys fans were talking about Amari Cooper was done. He was washed. They didn't need him. They gave him away for a 5th-round pick. Really, it was Amari Cooper and a 6th-round pick for a 5th-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. So the Browns basically got him for nothing. For nothing. And if you look at the stats, what I did there, I put up his basically per game average in his Cowboys career, played 56 games for them. And then I put the total touchdowns he had. And then you look at the per game averages for this season. it's not necessarily, you know, better than his per game with the Cowboys career. What is better? Career high, 9 touchdowns this season. Career high, never had that many. 14.9 yards a catch, higher than by far than what he had with the Cowboys. Over 1,100 yards this season. This basically would have been his second best, or you could argue the best season he had with the Cowboys, what he did this year with the Browns. And I mean, considering how rough the Cowboys offense looked at times, I am sure that they regret this trade very much, which makes me so happy because Amari Cooper could even improve going into next season with the healthy Deshaun Watson. I mean, he had Jacoby Brissett throwing to him for the majority of the season. He still put up big, big numbers. Man, what a horrible trade by the Cowboys. Next up, we got Zay Jones. This is a guy, this is kind of a deep cut, if you want to put it like that. But this is one of the guys that interested me because going to the Bills, second round pick out of East Carolina, I believe. Going to the Bills, first 2 years, solid. Had a breakout year, I think his sophomore season at like 700 yards, 7 touchdowns, something like that. And then he went to the Raiders. And his 3 years with the Raiders did not go so well. Look at the totals. Look at the totals in his 3 years with the Raiders and what he did this season. It should not be that close in some areas. And I mean, touchdowns blew it out the water. So, I mean, all credit, I think, goes to Trevor Lawrence and Coach Peterson for really just making this offense so explosive that a guy can come in year one from being a role player somewhere else to having 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, it was a great year for Zay Jones. And I'm excited to see, a lot of people are probably gonna have their eyes on, uh Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley in that offense, but I'm interested in Zay Jones. Let's see if he can keep this up and become wide receiver 2 on that team. Moving on to another year one Jaguar, we got Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram had a really rough reputation with the Giants. I mean, he was one of the most laughable Pro Bowlers ever. Those stats are not Pro Bowl, no matter how you slice it. And then he went to the Jaguars. And I mean, look at the comparison there from a Pro Bowl season in the NFC one year to what he did this year. I don't feel like anybody was talking about it. I mean, I felt like he just had big game after big game, and it kind of went unnoticed. So I think this is the definition of not only a comeback season, but really a breakout season. It was by far the best season of his career. I just put comeback because he kind of regained the form that he kind of had during his Pro Bowl year, but even then, he was never playing at this level. So shout out to Evan Ingram, again, Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence. Big reasons why year one players can come in and look very, very good on the Jaguars. Next up, we got Carl Lawson. Now, many of you probably know who Carl Lawson is. We probably didn't even know what team he played for. I knew of him. I mainly just knew that he went down last year to a major injury, didn't play at all last season. I don't know if it was an Achilles or an ACL, something like that. But man, when I did research for this video, I found out that Carl Lawson is sneakily one of the biggest beasts in the NFL. If you look at that stat down there, every healthy season he has played, he has had at least 20 QB hits. The year before he got hurt, 2020, he had 32 QB hits. I don't know if you guys kind of understand this. There are a lot of all pros in this league that don't average 20 QB hits a season, okay? Carl Lawson is sneakily a beast. He's never had any 11, 12, 13 sack seasons. He usually hangs around 8, 8.5, 7. But man, does he bully and beat quarterbacks in the NFL. And basically, the reason this is a comeback mainly is due to injury. How he kind of came back off the injury. And if it's his rookie season, the reason I put his rookie year up here, that was his career high in sacks, 8.5. Look what he did this season, man. Better in many categories, twice as many tackles, more QB hits, more tackles for a loss. Sacks, yeah, it wasn't a career high or anything like that, but he didn't play last year. The man didn't play at all last season, came back and was a sneakily amazing role player for the Jets. And I don't feel like he got any shine. So on this video, we're going to give shine to the people who need it. Shout out to Carl Lawson bouncing back from injury. Next up, we got Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes, man. When doing research for this video, I didn't know Jerry Hughes was still in the league, let alone putting up 9 sack seasons. And the interesting thing here is that the Texans sucked. Nobody talked about the Texans, especially on defense. And out of nowhere, not getting any sort of talk or attention, we got Jerry Hughes just, flying right under the radar, putting up sneakily one of the best seasons of his career. Now, if you remember, he was very good for the Bills, in the early to mid 2010s. Okay. You look in 2014, he had 10 sacks. There was another year with the Bills, he had at least 9 sacks. So he was a very good pass rusher for the Bills. Never made a Pro Bowl or anything like that. But 34 years old, it just blows my mind that at 34 years old on the Texans, he puts together one of the best seasons of his career. So shout out to Jerry Hughes. Next up, we got Morgan Fox. Now, I would not blame any of you for not knowing who this guy is because before doing this video, I didn't know who this guy is. But I basically looked at the trend here. 2020 with the Rams, the man had 6 sacks. Then 20, then we'll get to 2021. Then comes back 2022, Chargers, 6.5 sacks, career year across the board. And I'm like, what the hell happened? 2021, was he hurt? Did something happen? Like what? He played with the Panthers. That's what happened. He played for the Panthers, pretty healthy, played almost all the games, had like a sack. Didn't go well. So that leads me to believe if a guy is successful in one place, bad with you, then goes somewhere else and is successful, I have to believe you are the reason, right? So the Panthers, I put all the blame on them. Morgan Fox, career year this season with the Chargers, and I mean, only 576 snaps, so it's not like he was out there every time, as a featured pass rusher. So I'm excited to see what he does next year, competing with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, obviously, to get out there. But shout out to Morgan Fox bouncing back from the career-threatening decision to play for the Panthers. So shout out to him. Next up, we got Melvin Ingram, another guy who I did not even know he was still in the league until I watched like Dolphins Bills, I think it was the first game, and he had 2 sacks. He had like 2 sacks, a forced fumble against the Bills. I'm like, what the hell? Melvin Ingram still playing? And the answer is yes, he is still playing, and he played very, very well. Look what he did his last 2 seasons. I believe he played for the Chiefs and the Steelers, maybe. Just lackluster and so sad considering how good he was with the Chargers early on in his career. And here we go with the Dolphins only playing 45% of the snaps. This guy was a role player, and he put together 6 sacks, 10 QB hits, 7 tackles for a lot. What? Incredible. I mean, he did more than he did the last 2 years combined in many stats, and he played every single game for the first time since 2018. It's been 4 years. Man, shout out to Melvin Ingram. He is still unsigned, but I do not believe it's because of his play. I think he's probably asking for a little too much money, but I would be shocked if this guy does not get picked up by a very good Super Bowl contending team and use him as a rotational pass rusher because he balled out last season for the Dolphins. They only got Justin Houston, just has begun to age like wine in the NFL, if you want to put it like that. 2021, only like he didn't do well, right? First season with the Ravens, I believe, down year coming off his time with the Colts, where he was a very good rotational, pass rusher. And then this season, most sacks since 2019, 9.5 sacks for 33-year-old Justin Houston, whatever it is, 17 QB hits. Why is nobody talking about this? Now he would have been the best pass rusher on my Seahawks with those numbers. And he only started one game and he's still unsigned. So this is the ridiculous thing. He's still unsigned. Justin Houston, the man with 9.5 sacks, 17 QB hits. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's a conspiracy or something. I would assume he returns to the Ravens since that's where he's had his most recent success. But man, how is this man unsigned? Someone pick him up. Next up, we got CJ Mosley. Now, this is interesting because if you just look at the raw stats, you'd say, well, last year he had more tackles, he had more this, he had more that. But if you look at the advanced stats, his coverage numbers, his missed tackle rate, you would see it was not what we typically think a CJ Mosley season could be. And just look at that bottom stat down there. 5 all-pro teams. He's only been healthy 7 years of his career. And he's made 5 all-pro teams in those 7 years. So last season he was healthy, but he didn't really look like himself coming off the injury. I believe he missed the entire 2020 season. This year came back with a vengeance. He was the heart of the Jets defense, and obviously many reasons why that defense was so good. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Carl Lawson, Quinn Williams stepping up. But CJ Mosley is the heart. He is the engine at the middle linebacker position for that team. And there was a reason this season he was an all-pro. 4.4 missed tackle rate, so low for a guy with that many tackles. Career high targets and pass coverage, so he stepped up there and playing a bigger role in pass coverage. I mean, there's a reason he was an all-pro this year and not last season. The advanced stats show it. He stepped up big, and that's a big reason why the Jets defense went from the bottom to one of the best in the league. Then we got Stephon Gilmore. This is a pretty easy story. Former Defensive Player of the Year at corner, down year, his final year in New England, injured his whole time with the Panthers. Then this season, most people had sold their stock of Stephon Gilmore, and all he did was come in and have his best season since the Defensive Player of the Year season. Only 19 games played the last 2 years. And just look at the stats. Look at the stats. They're better than what he did last season across the board. Obviously, only 8 games, but 11 passes defended, 56.2 completion percentage. It's just he has solidified himself again as being a top tier corner. And of course, the Cowboys got him for nothing. That annoys me very, very much because Stephon Gilmore bounced back in a big, big way. Definition of a comeback season, and I am very scared of him playing on the Cowboys. Sticking with the Cowboys, we got Leighton Vander Esch. Kind of a complicated story. Rookie season, tremendous. 140 tackles, only 10 missed tackles. A massive reason for the Cowboys' kind of resurgence on defense these last couple years. But the past few seasons, just really, I don't know if it was injury, probably was a mix of injuries and just bad play was leading him to be a candidate to get cut last offseason because he was just a shell of his former self, his rookie season self. But then this season, he turned it around. He still missed time, only played 14 games, but he had 90 tackles. Look at that. Only 3 missed tackles compared to 90 total tackles. And if you look at just look at the snaps per game, he had upped it this season. So he has a big role at the linebacker position for the Cowboys. He is very valuable. That's why they went from possibly cutting him to now re-signing him. They really need him. Career high 4 tackles for loss. Real a sneaky player. Most people probably didn't even know that Leighton Vander Esch fell off. But let me tell you, he did fall off, but he is back now for the Cowboys. Now we got a pair of veteran Eagles pass rushers here who stepped up out the blue. Now, let me concede the fact that the main reason for this is the amount of talent they had around them. Okay, you had Javon Hargrave, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat. I understand this. But Brandon Graham, to have 11 sacks and 16 QB hits, one of the best seasons of his career this year, out of nowhere. Only played 2 games last season. Career high in sacks at the age of 34. And this is the scary thing. This is the really terrifying thing. He played 43% of the snaps. 43. This was a rotation player with 11 sacks. That would have led many, many teams in the NFL. 11 sacks, 16 QB hits, and he played 43% of the snaps. That is ridiculous. Shout out to Brandon Graham. And this is a big reason why the Eagles terrify me. Moving on, Fletcher Cox, similar story. Down year last season. Many people thought it was the end of the road for Fletcher Cox. He was done. And then this season, he comes out and gets 7 sacks, 14 QB hits as an interior player. We've always known Fletcher Cox is one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL. Most sacks and pressures since 2018, and the least amount of snaps he's played since 2012. It's been over a decade. And the man bounced back in a major way. Eagles re-signed him. He will be back next year, unfortunately, to the chagrin of the rest of the NFC. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for everybody else. Then we got Pat Peterson. Man, as a Seahawks fan, I thought this man was cooked. I thought he was done. He was washed. The Vikings would be his last ride, and he would be ungraciously exited from the NFL. That did not happen because he basically just had the second best season of his career, a possible Hall of Fame career. Patrick Peterson just had 5 picks and 15 passes defended with amazing coverage stats. Look at that. His last Pro Bowl year, which was 2018. Look at the stats. Look at the stats. I don't know how he wasn't an All-Pro this season. He could have easily been All-Pro. I don't even know if he was a Pro Bowler or not. He probably should have been. Man. Second most interceptions and passes defended in his career. And the Vikings just let him walk in free agents. Let him go to the Steelers. 2 years, $14 million. I don't know how. What a deal for the Steelers. And the Vikings continue to crumble as I'm recording this video. They just released Dalvin Cook. So the Vikings are collapsing, in my opinion. But shout out to Patrick Peterson for, I mean, who would have thought? Who would have thought Pat Pete in Minnesota puts together a possible All-Pro season? Incredible. This is Jaire Alexander. Pretty simple. I'll give you the rundown here. 2020, one of the best corners in the NFL. 2021 gets hurt. 2022 comes back. Career year across the board. Career low missed tackle rate. Career high interceptions. Career low passer rating allowed. All pro. One of the best players in the league. Very simple story. Next up, we got Rashaan Evans. Former first-round pick by the Titans, 2018. They do not extend him. They let him walk in free agency. He goes to the Falcons. What does he do with the Falcons? Oh, just has 159 tackles with a sub 2% missed tackle rate. Okay. Plays 98% of their snaps. Basically becomes the most important or second most important player on the Falcons defense. And yet he is a free agent. I don't know how. Don't ask me. I assume he will get signed within the next couple weeks because, I mean, somebody needs this man. Yeah, he's not the greatest in pass coverage, but who cares? The man is a tackle machine, gets in there, stuffs the run, and he's an Iron Man. I mean, 17 games playing 98% of the snaps. This man probably played top 10 in the league as far as snaps played in the league for defensive players. So shout out to Rashaan Evans. I don't know why he's unsigned. And the last player we got here is Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett, most people, they don't pay attention to the interior defensive linemen. They probably didn't even know last season was not a very good year for him. But let's look at 2020, which was his last, well-known good year. And let's compare that to what he did this year. Now, 4 to 6 sacks, obviously. Interior defensive linemen don't get as many sacks as edge rushers. We know this. But 61 tackles to 52 tackles. 12 tackles for a loss, 8 tackles for a loss. Still putting up 17 QB hits. And this is the thing about Grady. You want to talk about Iron Man? Missed 2 games in the last 7 years. Okay? More sacks and tackles for a loss in the last 2 years combined. Career high 3 batted passes at the line of scrimmage. So this is a guy who's actually leveling up as his career continues, which is scary to see because if he stays with the Falcons and he takes it up to another level, we may see a good Falcons defense for the first time in my lifetime. So shout out to Grady Jarrett. That is going to be it for this video, man. That felt good. I'm happy to be making original content again. Shout out to all of the new subscribers that we've got since the last, original content I've made. And I am motivated. You will see a lot more of these videos. So keep a lookout for that. And I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Peace.
It's out the motherfucking pack. Right out the niggas don't know how to act.